Hi everyone, welcome back for part 6 of the Santa Maria build. We'll be covering the making of the masts and yards and the installation of the rigging blocks. Before we get started, I'd like to give a shout out to Joe of Geno Joe's Modeling here on YouTube. He's doing a video log of the Santa Maria also. I highly recommend you check out his videos. I'm finding it interesting to see someone else do this build. As you may recall, at the end of the Part 5 video, I was contemplating on whether to use the provided material or dowels for the making of the mask and yards. In that I don't have the correct tools, such as a lathe, to make them round, I opted out for dowels. Here's the assembly of the crow's nest. One quick note, there's no mention in the instruction manual or the blueprints about making a pass-through holes for the rigging ropes. I'm glad I caught this early. First thing I needed to do was rough cut the mast and yards to length. You may notice that there's different types of woods are being used. I was unable to use the same wood for all the different diameters. To help with the profiling, I used a battery and electric drills. The battery-powered drill came in handy for the finer finish work. For the yard end profiling, I rough cut the ends with a knife first, then either used a battery-operated drill and a file, or file and hand sanding for the longer and larger ones. With the 4 different woods being used, I made sure that all the mask and yards were coated with pre-stained wood conditioner. This will keep the dyeing process uniform throughout. Another concern I had for the provided yards was if I could have made them round, the finished diameter would be too small and not match the blueprints. During the dyeing process, I tried to keep the mask and yards a lighter tone than the hull to give it some contrast. After they were done, I compared them to the blueprints. They look good. I know this is a little bit unconventional when attaching the yards to the masts. Instead of using the ropes the traditional way, I measured and then notched out the yard and mast for a rough fit. Then I drilled 2 holes for the brass pin. After custom fitting them together, I used super glue for secure fit. Later on, I can add the rope and nobody will know the difference. After finishing the bowsprit, I applied the same technique to the bow mast and the main mast and the stern mast. Now the fun part begins, installing all the rigging blocks, eye bolts, cleats, and standoffs. This took a little bit of time. First thing I needed to do was re-drill and clean out all the rigging block holes. Nothing worse than running into a plug hole during the rigging process. One thing I found interesting during the installation process was having to study the 2 rigging blueprint pages on the locations of the blocks, eye bolts, and cleats and their purpose. After completion, I now have a good working knowledge of the rigging. Actually, I have about 80% of it memorized. It should go fairly fast. Here's a couple of photos of the eye bolt locations on the bow deck and on the stern deck. Assembly of the rope ladder blocks was pretty straightforward. It was just very time consuming. Well, I'm going to bring this video to an end with a series of photos with the mask in place. Nothing is glued into place, still we'll need the room to work. I'm thinking about part 7 will just involve the main mast and rope ladders installation. Should be finished in a little over a week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you for part 7.